This is the peaceful world of One Piece, at least for the world government, until a certain rubbery boy enters the chat and starts giving very sweet kisses of his punches to everyone who stands, or doesn't stand in his way. Today, we're talking about every single victim of Luffy, and where they are nowadays. And finally enough, the very first thing Luffy did on his first day of his pirate journey was kick the solid ass of this dude. We know Shank's right-hand man is Ben Beckman, and his left hand. So Luffy finally got revenge on the Sea King that took Shank's arm. Where this dude is nowadays, well, no one really cares. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, the most beautiful woman, Alvida. She was just minding her business, but out of nowhere, Luffy entered the chat and sent her flying into the sea, freeing his friend and the future hero of the Marines, Kobe. But it was destiny written by God himself for Alvida, because after Luffy sent her flying, she found a smooth devil fruit, which literally made her hot like fire. After losing her crew, she went on to seek revenge against Luffy, which completely changed her fate, because nowadays she is part of the crew of an Emperor of the Sea. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, Morgan. Actually, a lot of fans remember Luffy fighting Axe Hand Morgan after freeing Zoro. However, Zoro was the one who finished Morgan, while Luffy actually defeated Helmeppo instead. Thanks to Helmeppo, Zoro is now Luffy's right-hand man. Immediately after that battle, Luffy beat up his very first friend on his journey, Kobe. After getting beaten by Luffy, Kobe and Helmeppo were later recruited by Garp and trained under him. Nowadays, both of them are members of Sword, which is kind of the Marines. Sword members care about the Navy, but the Navy doesn't give a fuck about them. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, the lion tamer Moji and his lion Richie. Well, Moji almost tamed Luffy. Captured Luffy, but not for long, especially when Luffy had to fight on behalf of Choo-Choo, the king of loyalty. Luffy easily defeated Moji, but then had to face the boss. This was Luffy's first fight against a fellow devil fruit user, making it a significant challenge. However, once Nami and Luffy managed to tie up all of Buggy's body parts, Baby Buggy didn't stand a chance and got hit with a Gum Gum bazooka. After separating from his crew, Buggy had his own adventures filled with struggles. Somehow he met his crew again, but got captured by the Marines and then met Luffy and Impel Down. They're both of them teamed up, and after that, everything changed for him. Whenever he pushed his luck, it actually worked. He somehow became a warlord, and now he is an emperor of the sea. Buggy has decided to push his luck once again and is on his way to find the greatest treasure, One Piece, with having the strongest swordsman in the world and a former warlord in his crew. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, Kuro the Catboy. This dude spent more than a decade on his plan and almost succeeded, but out of nowhere, Luffy entered the chat and destroyed his 200 IQ plan with the dumbest strategy. He wrapped his rubbery limbs around Kuro so he couldn't use his speed to his advantage anymore, and then headbutted him with a Gomu Gomu bell. After that, we never saw this dude again, except once when Luffy's bounty poster was published. The next character who became a victim of Luffy while he was recruiting a crewmate is Don Krieg, who led the largest fleet in the entire East Blue. After Mihawk sliced up his fleet and ships in the Grand Line, he tried to take the Barity for himself, but once again, Luffy intervened. Despite putting up a decent fight, Don Krieg couldn't compete with Luffy's brute strength and was completely defeated. The current status and recent actions of Don Krieg are unknown. Now, the next victim of Luffy is Arlong, who was more powerful and infamous than any other pirate in East Blue. At this point, I considered him the strongest, but I was terribly mistaken. The final fight ended in a room where Nami had spent her horrible childhood. To make up for it, Luffy brought down Arlong and his entire park with a Gum Gum axe. Following his defeat, Arlong was captured by the Marines and is now chilling and Impelled Down. He is on the 6th level, the lowest and most secure level of the prison. Now we have entered the Grand Line, and the first victim there was Mr. 3. This dude almost turned most of the crew into wax statues until Luffy and Usopp made their grand entry. After that, Luffy absolutely decimated Mr. 3. Later we see Mr. 3 again in Impelled Down, where he teamed up with Luffy against Magellan, and they escaped together. After that, we see him in Marineford, where he tried to help Luffy and Ace. Nowadays, he is part of the Emperor Buggy D. Clown's crew. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, the former king of Drum Island, Waypole. After getting kicked by Luffy, Waypole was actually winning in life, but not for so long. He became the head of his own toy enterprise and married Cinderella. 2 years later, he was given his own kingdom by the world nobles, and now reigns as the king of the Black Drum Kingdom. During the latest reverie, he witnessed the assassination of Nefertari Cobra by Imu and the 5 elders. Now he is with Vivi on the ship of Big News Morgans, and I think we will see him again in the story with Vivi. The next victim of Luffy is Sir Crocodile. After being defeated twice by Crocodile, Luffy beat him up using nothing but his own blood. After he was defeated by Luffy, he was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment and Impelled Down, but later he was freed by Luffy in exchange for aiding in the rescue of his brother and went to Marineford to participate in the war. While initially aiming to kill Whitebeard, his contempt for the Marines led him to ally with Luffy and the Whitebeard pirates. After the war, we didn't see him until the warlord system was abolished. After teaming with Mihawk, he built his own organization, Cross Guild. However, Buggy accidentally usurped the presidency of the organization due to misunderstandings on the part of his crew, and now serves as the figurehead leader, which led the world government to recognize him as one of the new 4 emperors. The next victim of Luffy is Bellamy. In their first meeting, when Bellamy picked a fight and made fun of Luffy's dreams, Luffy just sat there and took it, just like Shanks did, because Bellamy wasn't worth the trouble. But later, when Bellamy dared to hurt one of Luffy's friends, Luffy got very serious. It took only a single punch to break Bellamy's spirit completely. When they met again in Dressrosa, it again took only one punch to finish Bellamy. But this time, things were completely different. Nowadays, Bellamy is a self-proclaimed member of Luffy's Grand Fleet. He has decided to retire retire from piracy, moving to a dyed goods town to become an apprentice dyer. Moving on to Luffy's next victim, God Enel, or at least someone who considered himself to be a god. This dude was at an admiral level but was completely devastated by Luffy just because Luffy's rubber body was completely immune to his lightning power. Surprisingly, even without his lightning power, Enel still put up a decent fight using his observation haki. However, in the end, Luffy defeated him. Nowadays, my boy's on the moon. There, he met some robot beings whom he tried to attack with his lightning. To his surprise, the beings got activated or powered up due to this and started to follow Enel, and I think he got to know some ancient history on the moon. So moving on to the next victim of Luffy, CP9 Agent Bluno. However, he was completely outclassed by Luffy's new form, Gear 2nd, but then Luffy had to fight the boss Lucci. This guy gave Luffy his toughest fight in the entire story so far, and Lucci actually started by devastating Luffy. However, Lucci finally met defeat by receiving Jet Gatling. After his defeat by Luffy at Enies lobby, Lucci was dismissed from CP9 by Spandam, who declared him and the other assassins responsible for the Straw Hats' havoc on Enies lobby. However, within the next 2 years, he managed to be reinstated into Cypher Pole as part of CP0, this time as Spandam's superior. Now in the Egghead arc, we saw a rematch between Luffy and Lucci, where both were on completely different levels, but still he was outclassed by Luffy. Later in the series, his fate is not that good. So the next victim of Luffy is Gecko Moria. Here the warlord Gecko Moria resurrected his ultimate zombie Oars from the body of a fearsome ancient giant. The whole Straw Hat crew struggled to take down Oars, but Luffy took in a ton of shadows into his own body, transforming into Nightmare Luffy, one of his most iconic forms. He ended up crushing Oars, and as a result, Moria was next. Even when Moria used Shadows Asgard to absorb 1,000 shadows into himself and boost his own strength, he still could not defeat Luffy. The last we saw of Moria, he was on Pirate Island, which he attacked with his zombies to save his crewmate. After that, there is nothing we know about him. Maybe Blackbeard used his power for something no one could have guessed. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, who is a Celestial Dragon. When the Celestial Dragon, St. Charlo, shot Hachi, one of Luffy's friends, and as we know, anyone who hurts Luffy's friends is in deep trouble. And Luffy landed one of the most satisfying punch the last time we saw Charlos was during the Reverie, where he tried to kidnap Shirahoshi. Clearly, he hadn't learned his lesson. To save Shirahoshi, Sai and Leo unleashed a devastating strike on Charlos, and all the onlookers confirmed that Charlos was dead. Moving on to Luffy's next victim, Hody Jones. The first time the Straw Hat Pirates encountered a fishman, Arlong, they struggled a lot. However, after the time skip, they defeated a fishman without breaking a sweat. We must consider that Hody Jones was powered up by an insane amount of energy steroids. Luffy was fighting a fishman underwater, even though he is a devil fruit user. Remarkably, he was even using fire powers at the bottom of the ocean. After Hody was defeated, Neptune showed no rage towards him and simply had him imprisoned. Clearly, taking steroids was a big mistake. The next victim of Luffy is Caesar Clown. After losing his first round to Caesar Clown because of his suffocating ability, Luffy quickly figures out Caesar's trick in the second round. Luffy then defeats another clown with his Grizzly Magnum. After that, when Luffy's plan to take down Big Mom fails, where Caesar was also part of their plan, he escapes with the Vinsmoke family to the Germa Kingdom, where he establishes Neo-Mads with fellow ex-Mads member Vinsmoke Judge. And the next victim of Luffy is none other than Doflamingo. Up to this point, everyone Luffy has fought hasn't really pushed him to his limits, but Doflamingo really pushed Luffy, forcing him to reveal his ultimate secret, Gear 4th. With Gear 4th Bounce Man, Luffy decimated another Celestial Dragon or former Celestial Dragon. After Doflamingo was arrested by Admiral Fujitora along with most of his crew, he is now chilling at Impel Down, placed in level 6. And yeah, if you read the manga, then you know we're seeing him again and again. My headcanon says bro will break out of Impel Down, don't ask how, but I know he's going to show up in the final war. Moving on to the next victim of Luffy, Cracker, who fought with hard biscuits. Unfortunately for him, Cracker couldn't make enough biscuits for Luffy's bottomless stomach. After eating the biscuits, Luffy used those extra calories to turn into Tank Man, and Cracker got cooked. After this battle, we never saw him until Van Augur and Aokiji showed up. Once again, my boy got cooked, but this time it was cold. Next, Luffy fight to one of my favorite antagonists, Katakuri. Yeah, I'm not going to call him a victim. Over the course of their long battle, Luffy developed his advanced observation haki, allowing him to see into the future. The battle basically ended in a draw, with both fighters seemingly down, but Luffy was able to get back up. Now, there is still a lot of discussion about whether Katakuri just let him win at the end or not. After that, we really don't see Katakuri. In a One Piece cover story, it was revealed that while the Straw Hats made their escape from Whole Cake Island, Germa stayed behind to handle the fallout. Sanji's brothers, Neji and Yonji, were even confined by Mont D. Ayer's book fruit after they were defeated by Big Mom. While Germa executed their rescue mission, Van Augur and Kuzan ambushed Cracker. On the other side, Katakuri had his hands full with Germa. Funny enough, the legendary Caesar Clown came in clutch with a new application of his devil fruit, using his gas fruit to disorient Katakuri and Oven, causing them to fight each other. Now, the next victim of Luffy is in Wano. We know that Law's initial plan was to secretly sneak into Wano, but Luffy being Luffy, the second he landed in Wano, he started causing a ruckus. The real victim of Luffy was Kaido. Kaido had just woken up from his sleep, thinking he would have a great party, but Luffy had something else planned for him. This was Luffy's hardest fight so far. In fact, Kaido was so strong that he defeated Luffy at least twice and seemingly killed him. Unfortunately for Kaido, this also led to Luffy awakening his devil fruit. After that, Gear 5 Luffy went completely wild and sent Kaido deep beneath of the One Piece world. After that, we don't know what happened to him. Now, the crew is an egghead. Manga readers know who is next, and I don't want to give spoilers to anime watchers, so I guess it's time to end the video. Before leaving, let me thank you for giving your time to me. Once again, thank you very much.